Can you just imagine the shock? A top university like Harvard suddenly told it can't enroll international students anymore.
It sounds almost unbelievable, doesn't it? But that's exactly what happened in late May 2025. The Department of Homeland Security, DHS, basically dropped a bombshell.
Yeah. Undersecretary Kristi Noem,
Huh.
the announcement was stark. Harvard can no longer enroll foreign students.
And it wasn't just about future students. The immediate worry was for the ones already there. You know, they might have to transfer or even lose their legal status.
A massive deal. Harvard, of course, hit back immediately, filed a lawsuit, called the whole thing illegal.
Right, and they did get a temporary restraining order from a judge, which paused things for a bit.
A temporary reprieve, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
But you can feel the uncertainty still hanging heavy for thousands of students. So that's what we're digging into today. How did we get here, and what does it all mean?
To really get it, we probably need to start with this SEVP certification. It sounds bureaucratic, but it seems absolutely central here. What is it?
Okay, yeah, let's unpack SEVP. It stands for the Student and Exchange Visitor Program. Basically, it's the government saying, yes, this university is approved to host international students. You know, that runs on F1, M1, J1 visas.
It's the foundation.
Totally. Someone described losing SEVP certification as like losing your license to teach international students.
Mm-hmm.
Because you can't issue that critical document, the Form I-20.
Exactly. And that's what DHS told Harvard on May 22nd, 2025. Your SEVP certification is revoked, effective immediately. That was the ban.
Wow. Effective immediately.
Yeah. No more I-20s means no way for international students to get or keep their visas through Harvard. It really puts a spotlight on how much universities, maybe especially the big ones, rely on international student tuition these days. Makes them kind of vulnerable, potentially.
The political pressure, yeah.
Yeah.
So trace it back for us. What led up to this? How does a place like Harvard suddenly face this kind of action?
Well, it seems the fuse was lit back in April 2025. Reports suggest Harvard's president, Alan Garber, basically refused to comply with some specific demands from DHS.
Demands about what?
About campus protests, apparently, and also the university's hiring practices. Harvard seems to have drawn a line in the sand.
Okay, so this is where institutional autonomy clashes with government oversight, right?
Pretty much. Garber reportedly told his team the university would not accept demands to change its hiring and admissions practices and its curriculum. That kind of direct refusal seems to have, well, provoked a pretty strong reaction from DHS.
Strong reaction feels like an understatement. What happened next?
DHS, led by Secretary Noem, gave Harvard just 72 hours, a tiny window.
To do what?
To hand over a huge amount of student records, private information, things linked to peaceful protests, disciplinary stuff. It sounds incredibly broad.
72 hours for all that. What specifically were they asking for?
The list was pretty detailed. All records of any illegal activity involving any non-immigrant student in the past 5 years, records of dangerous or violent behavior, anything about alleged threats or rights deprivations.
That's already a lot.
All disciplinary records for these students, and even, get this, all audio or video footage of any protest activity on Harvard's campus involving non-immigrant students in the past 5 years.
Audio and video. That seems like a massive overreach into student privacy.
That was Harvard's argument, essentially. They called it an unreasonable fishing expedition, said it violated privacy and First Amendment rights, free speech, assembly, you know.
So they didn't comply fully.
They didn't. They pushed back legally. And like we said, that led to the judge issuing the temporary stop on the ban on May 23rd. Harvard's lawsuit used strong language, blatant violation of the Constitution, warning of immediate and devastating harm.
Okay, so we've seen this shocking ban. Now let's dig into the why. What reasons did the government give for making such a drastic move? What was their justification?
Right. The stated reasons are key here. The government alleged Harvard was creating an unsafe environment specifically for Jewish students. They also mentioned pro-Hamas sympathies and, interestingly, collaboration with the Chinese government.
Those are incredibly serious allegations.
Absolutely. You saw DHS press releases, Secretary Noem on social media, accusing Harvard of fostering violence, anti-Semitism, and coordinating with the Chinese Communist Party.
So the narrative was that Harvard had become this problematic place, unsuitable for international students.
That was the narrative being pushed, yes.
Yeah.
That the environment itself was somehow dangerous or anti-American. Even if you're not connected to Harvard, you can see how this raises big questions about government power over universities.
It really touches on that balance between national security arguments and academic freedom, doesn't it?
It does, and Secretary Noem was explicit about it. She posted something like, "It is a privilege, not a right, for universities to enroll foreign students. Harvard have lost their SEVP certification as a result of their failure to adhere to the law. Let this serve as a warning to all universities." That sounds like a clear signal, a potential shift in how the government views this.
A warning shot? And beyond the principles, the money involved here is just staggering, right? For Harvard itself and maybe the whole U.S. economy.
Oh, absolutely staggering. International students are a huge financial engine for universities. For the 2024-25 year, Harvard's total cost of attendance was pushing, like $83,000?
Yeah, around $82,866. Tuition alone was over $56,000.
And they have nearly 6,800 international students. Do the math.
It's massive. Roughly $562 million a year just from those students in tuition and fees.
And that's just one university, albeit a very wealthy one. Look bigger picture. NAFSA, that's the Association of International Educators, they estimated international students pumped almost $44 billion into the U.S. economy in 2023-24.
$44 billion.
Yeah. And some reports break it down further, like students just from India contributing maybe $8 billion a year. So universities across the board become really reliant on that income.
So hitting a big name like Harvard with this kind of ban?
Yeah.
It sends ripples everywhere, doesn't it? One expert said something like, institutions that felt secure are now facing uncertainty.
Exactly. And an analyst pointed out, look, if it can happen to Harvard, what stops it from happening elsewhere? That sets a precedent.
But let's bring it back to the people directly affected. The students. Nearly 7,000 international students at Harvard. That's over a quarter of their student body. What did this mean for them personally?
Well, immediate chaos and fear, basically. Suddenly, their lives are thrown into turmoil. They're facing this awful choice. Scramble to find another university, maybe, or lose their legal status entirely and have to leave the country.
And the timelines are brutal.
Yeah.
Usually you get a grace period after finishing studies.
Yeah, F1 students typically get 60 days. J1s get 30 days to leave. But the worry here was, if the certification was revoked because of a violation, those grace periods could vanish.
Vanish, meaning they'd have to leave almost immediately.
Potentially within days. That was the fear.
We heard that dramatized voiceover from the perspective of an Indian student studying neuroscience. The feeling of just being told to pack up and go. The humiliation, the fear.
It's deeply affecting. That sense of being dispensable, the feeling that America is not a safe haven. That's a powerful and, frankly, quite worrying sentiment to hear.
The Times of India called it legal chaos and emotional turmoil, especially for Indian students finding themselves in legal jeopardy overnight, even with valid visas.
It's a bureaucratic nightmare with devastating human consequences. Think about trying to transfer mid-program, finding another university with an opening on such short notice.
Huge hurdles.
Yeah.
Immigration lawyers were saying this was pretty much unprecedented. Graduating students might be okay, get their diploma, have a short window to leave, but for those mid-study, very precarious.
Of course, Harvard has deep pockets and is fighting back hard legally. They called the DHS action unlawful. They're reaffirming support for their students. But while the lawyers argue...
Thousands of lives are just stuck in limbo.
Exactly. And it helps to see this in a bit of historical context, too, you know? International students have been part of U.S. higher education for a long, long time.
They enrich the campuses, contribute economically, build global networks.
Right. And the percentage of international students, especially at elite places like Harvard, has grown a lot. It's been a deliberate strategy for diversity for global reach.
So politically, this feels like a real turn. Even previous administrations, maybe more conservative ones, generally saw the value of international scholars, didn't they?
Generally, yes. This action, linking it to anti-Semitism, anti-Americanism, it feels more, inward-looking. It maybe taps into some older critiques of elite universities.
It seems tied into those broader culture war debates, diversity, free speech, internationalism itself.
It definitely feels bigger than just one campus issue.
So where are we right now? We mentioned the temporary restraining order is in place, stopping the ban for the moment.
Correct. But that's temporary. Reports say the Department of Justice is appealing quickly, so this legal fight is moving fast. It's definitely not over.
And there were those whispers, weren't there? At other universities, Brown, Cornell, Columbia, might have gotten warnings too.
Yeah, there were reports suggesting that hinting this might not just be about Harvard could have wider implications.
It really throws into sharp relief all these competing pressures, doesn't it? National security versus academic freedom, the economic benefits versus, well, the politics of it all, and the actual human lives caught in the middle.
Absolutely. All those forces pulling in different directions.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, maybe the thing to really chew on is this. What does this whole Harvard situation tell us about where international education and collaboration are heading? How are universities and governments going to navigate this kind of tension going forward?
That's the big question, isn't it? It certainly gives you a lot to think about regarding the future landscape of global higher education.